All right, so I'm placing my hands in my heart, taking in that deep breath of love and gratitude. So grateful for this time to come together, to be the two or more who are gathered in the name and the nature of love. Grateful for the teachings of A Course in Miracles and for our desire to live the teachings, not just understand them, read them, or memorize them. We're so grateful for all of our earthly and heavenly helpers. We ask them to surround us, supporting us during this call, blessing each and every one of us on this journey, all those who are here now, those who will listen later. We're grateful that we get to share the benefits of our own healing, expansion, and awakening with everyone because we're one with them. In grace and gratitude, we let it be, and so it is. Amen. So good to see you all. Would anyone like to begin our sharing?
I'll start out, and just a minute, I'm going to grab my card. Hold on.
All right, thanks, Deborah. Hi, Mitzi. Hi, Marjorie.
I struggled with some of this reading, but I wanted to say, last night I just see a real common theme in it, and it starts out at the very beginning with the first line when it says, "It is impossible to see something in part that you will not attribute to all your ability to direct your thinking as you choose as part of your power." I think what it's saying is, if you see something in one of your brothers, you kind of transfer that indirectly. It becomes a generality to everything. Just a minute, I have another line that fits with it.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe I don't. My card's just, oh, wait a minute. Hold on. I'm sorry. I'm trying to work with one hand here.
That's okay.
So then it says, all the illusions about the sonship are dispelled together as they were made together. Ego's picture of you is deprived. So, I just feel like this is a common theme throughout this whole reading, that if you see an aspect and a part of something, you're basically generalizing it to the entire thing.
Yes.
I don't know if I'm being clear or not.
No, that's perfectly clear. Yes, it's as we see any individual person or thing, that's how we see everything. So,
and that's why grievances can be such a problem, because you're taking that little part and then you're it automatically transfers to everything, kind of like Velcro.
Yes. Yes. Sticky little buggers, aren't they? Yeah, thank you, Deborah.
You're welcome.
Would anyone like to comment on that? Or Mitzi, go ahead. Can you unmute yourself?
Sure. Yeah, I think the idea was really driven even deeper this week about it's all projection. And it's a projection of how I see myself. It's still, again, about who am I, and that the world I see is a projection of how I actually see myself. And so I just had a shift in my thinking that to just see everything beautiful, and to realize that I'm a part of it, that if I see something, it's just been growing more in the last, I would say, well, definitely in the last 3 months, but surely within this last month, just really driving in more solidly with a true shift in my mind that it is all projection when I see something that is disturbing, or what I might call ugly, or something that I think it should not be that way. And when I have that thought, I know that it is a wrong thought, and I switch my attention to something else. Now, I would love to say that I'm doing that 100% of the time, but It's not true yet. So the other thing is, I thought about this whole this idea of taking a shortcut, that I could, instead of just thinking, well, one day, you know, I'm going to be thinking different, I'm going to see myself different, I was like, well, what is the point in waiting? Why don't I just believe that now and just go ahead and do it now, and stop wasting all this time? And that thought came to me, and I was like, well, yeah, I'll just go ahead and do that now. I am going to go ahead and take the shortcut. And so so far, it's but it's that whole idea of projection. I can just see it so much more clearly. And if I see it, something looks wrong, or I just go, oh, that is just projection of, I forgot who I am. I'm really, everything is good. You know, I'm rambling a little bit now, but thank you.
Thank you, Mitzi. Yep. We're not thinking that 100% yet, but we will. In the meantime, we're just not going to judge ourselves when we're not.
I've noticed for me, I'm getting better at not having so many attack thoughts and being more aware when they do come up. But I still have a tremendous amount of work on seeing faults in other people. I mean, that's something that just isn't coming easy for me.
Oh, yeah. I have that same challenge. And it's getting better every day. Thank you. Carla, go ahead.
So this reading was, I really was very challenged by this reading, which was really showed me that it was excellent. It was excellent. So, and what I'm realizing, that it's coming to me that thought, that I don't need to believe. The belief is really the key, because thought plus belief combined creates a power, right? That we read before. So that thoughts come and go. Thoughts will come. Attack, it seems like attack thoughts or whatever, just all thought. It comes and goes in our mind. And then when I believe it is when I give it the power. When I give it the power to be something. Until I do that, it's just a thought, or of the one mind. Plenty of people out there probably, I'm just guessing, because I'm not them, believe all the thoughts. They identify with them as them, right? And so we get to look at the thought, observe the thought, and choose. And choose with our higher self, not the ego. And I heard something somewhere that I found very helpful. I don't know, it might be confusing because I heard the whole thing. So I'm going to try to condense it. Is it in a way, in this body, we're like, it seems like we're different people, right? We're the ego self, the I self, the one that chooses the judgment, that sees everything as bad and wrong or whatever. It comes and fluctuates. But in the waking up, the one that's waking up, everyone here, really, and also everyone here, the one that's never fallen asleep. So this is what we're choosing, which one we're identifying with when we believe a thought. So in the third paragraph, it was so challenging. It's like talking about ego's this, and it's and it was and then it goes on to, I'm thinking, well, I gotta understand it, because it says in paragraph 6 that understanding brings appreciation, and appreciation brings love, and I desire love, so I must have to understand, right? Because that's where love is. It says right here. But the I, which I am I understanding it with? Which I? Is it the one that's fallen asleep, that got lost in the illusion, the life, the body, whatever, the one that's waking up, or the one that's always been awake? And that's what I'm really pause, step back, step aside, and let my higher self guide. So that's what I got out of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Carla. Beautifully said. Anybody else have anything that they would like to share? What they got from the reading? Go ahead.
I'm looking at this line that I said earlier, and now I see the connection. It's all the illusions about the sonship are dispelled together. So it's just like when we bring in a grievance, it comes together, and then it says they're dispelled together. So, they're kind of all clumped together. That's a good thing, because of course we want to get rid of them, but.
Yep, we're doing it together. Absolutely. Leslie.
Well, excuse me, first of all, I just want to say hi, everybody. It's been a couple weeks. I've missed you all. So it's nice to see your smiling faces. Hi, Diana. It's been a long time since I've talked to you.
Mm-hmm.
And as you can hear by my voice, I'm getting over a terrible cold, which I was on vacation all last week with my mom. We were alone together in a cabin in the woods. How I got this, only God knows, because I am very healthy. I have a very strong immune system. And I think, Penelope, I got it from you somehow, all the way from England. But that's okay, because it's leaving me soon. So I feel like I was a bad student, because it was last night in bed at like 11 o'clock at night. I could not sleep. I'm like, I didn't read my Course in Miracles yet. So I'm reading it, I'm highlighting it. And this is the kind of chapter and section that I don't think you can read when you're tired and sick, because it seemed really deep for me. And I can't say that I got much out of it, but I highlighted a few things. One is, oh goodness, paragraph 8 I thought was really good. Just starting at sentence 8. So paragraph 8, sentence 8, commitment to either must be total. They cannot coexist in your mind without splitting it. And I'm assuming that's the ego and spirit. If they cannot coexist in peace, and if you want peace, you must give up the idea of conflict entirely and for all time. This requires vigilance only as long as you do not recognize what it is true. While you believe that two totally contradictory thought systems share truth, your need for vigilance is apparent. I'm not sure I totally understand that, but I think what it's saying is, once you believe that only peace is possible, you don't have to be vigilant, because then you just know that that's the only choice. But I've got some ways to go. Yeah, life can, and I just turned 50 on September 13th, and I really, this is sort of going off subject here for a minute, but 50 was one of those things that I sort of dreaded, and it was like, I thought I'd be really upset about it. And I thought it was going to be this big deal, and it's Friday the 13th and I turned 50, and it just wasn't a big deal at all. And I truly believe that each decade of my life has truly gotten better and better and better. And I briefly told Robin in a text that a good friend of mine, he wasn't that good of a friend. He was actually my chiropractor for 15 years, but he died unexpectedly. He was on vacation in Spain, and he died at 44 on August 31st. And since that happened, I'm just like, what right do I have to complain about turning 50? Adam is never going to turn 50, and so many people loved him, and so many people respected him, and he helped so many people. And I don't know if it was an aneurysm. I don't know if it was a PE. I don't know what he died from. I was not privileged to those details. My ego really wants to know, as if that would matter. You know, it doesn't matter. He's gone, and I'm still here. And it's just very humbling. And oh my gosh, I figured I get upset talking to you guys. I just, and I know we've all dealt with the sudden death, and it's just, it's, you know, part of me figures is like, what's the point? You know, we're here for 1 second and then we can just be gone, snuffed out like it's nothing, you know, and I know, Linda, this has got to be hitting close to home because it's happened with your dad. And then I, you know, and I come back to work, and one of my coworkers' dad just died suddenly on Monday. It's just, man, you just have to, every single day, every single moment, I mean, because you just never know. You just never know. So, and, you know, Diana, I know how much your son and losing him, how hard that was to watch him die in a lengthy process. I mean, I never know which is easier, a long sickness like that, watching them die, or bam, just suddenly they're gone. And I think God gives you the only way that he knows we can handle, because I will never understand it. But I know God is good all the time, and I know God has a plan, and thank God I don't have to understand it, and I don't have to plan it. So I get to just practice, keep on practicing my intention of peace. And then one last, this is just a little silly story, but I've really been working with my angels a lot, and my guardian angel, I named her Gabby, and, you know, I pray for help a lot. And having this cold and having to come to work and everything, I was asking for help yesterday, and I was in my office, and I had just filled my hot water cup, just brimming hot. You know, I don't like hot tea, I just like hot water. So it's filled to the top, and it spilled. And somehow, I think it was my angel, grabbed the computer keyboard and the mouse and everything out of the way in time. So it just got on my one calendar that's okay, it dried out. It was just so amazing. And what was amazing about it was the grace I had, was that I didn't swear, I didn't get upset. I was just thankful. I was just like, oh, thank you, God, that I didn't ruin my keyboard. Thank you, God, that I didn't ruin some important document. I mean, that is growth. And I was really, man, I'm really starting to walk the walk, and that, it feels so good. And yeah, some things get upsetting, and some things we may never understand. And as far as my friend passing away, I mean, I just feel so bad for his wife and his parents, you know, and yet I don't know what their path is. I don't know what their soul plan was. Who am I to feel bad for them? You know, I'm just grateful that I got to know him during the time I did. So that's all I'm going to say. Thank you, everyone, for listening. I've been wanting to share that for 2 weeks now, because it happened August 31st. So, but lovely to see you all.
Glad you're here. I'm glad you're starting to feel a little better, and I'm sorry for the loss of your friend. And I understand that when somebody dies, it kind of puts perspective on things. I remember seeing Sheryl Sandberg. She's a chief operating officer at Facebook, and her husband died suddenly from a heart attack while the two of them were on vacation, and her kids were still home. And I remember her telling a story about her son was in like a basketball tournament or something at his school, and they lost the tournament. And so she asked him, you know, was he doing okay? Because there were other kids that were crying because, you know, they were hoping that they would make the finals and all this stuff. And he said to her, I think she said he was like 10 or 11 years old, in his wisdom, you know, this is just a basketball game. The rest of these kids that are so upset, they don't understand, like, this is just a basketball game. You know, they haven't been through the life challenges that he has been through. And so he has that perspective. And I feel like when somebody passes away, that it helps us to gather that perspective and take it into other areas of our life. So even though we don't know what anything is for, we can certainly use every situation for good. For good.
Absolutely. Like I said, turning 50 was a blessing. It was just a blessing. And I just thought it was going to be this horrible event. And I was just like, really? Really, Leslie, get over yourself. You're 50, you know? I mean, he was 44. And yet a lot of people younger than that die. So perspective, it's so true.
Yeah.
It's so true.
Yeah, thank you. Anybody else have anything that they would like to share to add to that conversation, or start with something else?
I wonder if anybody has a trick to being able to see yourself not as a body, because that's another one I really struggle with every day.
I don't know what the trick would be. I haven't been able to do it yet. You know, I just keep trying to remind myself that I am not a body, that I am a spirit, perfect, whole, and complete. And I happen to be in this body that I may seemingly not feel is perfect, whole, and complete in the moment. But I trust that whatever the circumstances are that I seem to be experiencing, that they are perfect for me, for my journey, whatever that journey may be. So yeah, I don't know. Go ahead, Corrine.
Yeah, what I would add to that also is that I think it was Lisa Natoli. I think I heard her one time saying that when you do a Course in Miracles, it's not that you're doing it, because we do the lessons one day, 1 year, and then we do it again and again. And she says, let the lessons do you. And that's what I'm observing with myself, that as I'm doing this work more and more, I start to see the changes happening. And so it's not really up to me to do it, but to just be faithful in the walk and allow the change to happen. And then what I think it was Leslie that read about commitment to either must be total. So yeah, we're gonna walk with the ego and we're gonna walk with spirit. Like Carla said, it's all in us, and as long as we're doing this back and forth, we're gonna experience those, I'm a body, all these other fears and things until little by little one spirit becomes bigger and bigger and bigger, and then we won't have to struggle so much anymore. So that's what I am really just reading, that, if it's not a total commitment, and none of us are really there yet, otherwise we'd already be enlightened, then it just means that I don't have to beat up on myself. I just know that I'm doing this and we're doing this, and that faith and trust that it is happening. And so all is well based on that. Thank you.
And I'll just share that I was listening to a David Hoffmeister video the other day, and he was talking about how even having a preference can be seen as a grievance. And I thought, oh, I don't think I'm ready to go there yet. But it gave me something to think about.
Yeah. Yep. Preferences. They can become judgments if we're not careful. Mitzi, go ahead. And then Carla.
So the whole body thing has been it's very abstract in so many ways. But one of the things that I noticed a lot, what I really appreciate what Corrine said, let the lessons live us, or something like that, was that I started to remember what the Course in Miracles said, the Holy Spirit said, that our minds are for communication. That's where we're really connecting. is with our minds, not our bodies. And so what I began to notice is that when I would go into a social situation, before that, I would be like thinking about, you know, I started to realize that I am bringing my mind here to connect with people, not my body. It is my mind. And now that my mind is being transformed and I am having more and more of the mind of Christ, and I am seeing more clearly, then I'm connecting, but it's not with my body. I'm connecting with this kind of new kind of thinking. And that is making a shift in me away from um, trying to use my body to get the things in life that the ego says I ought to be getting. So it's really shifted the way I'm living my life right now. And that's kind of helped me. But I have to say, it's still, when I read it, there are certain phrases that I read in here and I go, I wish he'd said that another way. That just doesn't make sense, or that just really bugs me. Thank you.
Thank you, Mitzi. And we're practicing. Go ahead, Carla.
Well, I wanted to address the when she talked about preference. It's thinking, but I don't think that I'm using words, right? That preferences aren't wrong or bad or anything. It's the attachment to the preference. So if I prefer strawberry ice cream, it's my favorite or whatever, and I go to Baskin and Robbins and they're out of it. They're out of strawberry, and I see that, oh man, then that is, and even that attachment isn't bad or wrong. It's actually just an indication. That's what I think. If I when I my tool, I guess, to disidentify with the body is to observe the body. I am the observer of the body, not the body. And so I notice, oh, I have discomfort in my right knee. Ooh. And I don't go, oh man, I gotta, my right knee is whatever. And then I go to judge it, and then I name it, and then I get lost in the illusion, right? I get lost in the ego, and just to notice it and go, oh, like we go to Baskin Robbins, you want strawberry, and you prefer it, and there's no strawberry, and you, oh, okay, and then when I pause and I go, wait for something to come to my mind. Oh, I'll go with, and I name whatever. Maybe I look at it and something was, whatever it is. So even the attachment isn't good, because we can observe that too and go, oh, I mean, actually for me, ego has been one of the greatest tools to just observe it. I'm like, and it's so easy to see it if you don't get lost in it. How it's unloving, it's judgment, I'm labeling it probably, but we feel it, and that's the divine alarm clock. So the preference isn't bad or wrong. It's if you feel the going along with whatever happens after you notice the preference, that's the divine alarm clock. And it's so amazing how so many tools Jennifer has talked about for so long. I didn't get them, and that's okay. I'm waking up. I'm the one that's waking up, and now I know I'm the Christ. And so and I forget every day. Don't think I stay there. So
Yeah, thank you, Carla. Yep, we're interested in being more Christ-like every day, and it just comes from practice, practice, practice. Robin, go ahead.
Yeah, I thought this was very challenging, and I was like thinking, oh, I can't wait to read this, and I mean, it took me forever to read it, and but there were some places that really um, comforted my heart. So, but I am deciding that I am on this path, and that every moment that I stop and I think a loving thought, in every moment that I work in the workbook, in every moment that I read from the book, in every moment that I say a prayer, there's the allowing, and I'm like, just let this unfold. My preference would be to, just in an instant be holy and everything would be beautiful and wonderful to my ego. But I'm just deciding that instead of beating myself up because I'm not further along, or that this is hard, or it's just like every time it's, Carla said something, don't worry about what you can't do, just do what you can do. And I think I'm finally starting to take that to heart, that just to be grateful for what I am doing. And I certainly get distracted and I go off, you know, but I know when I'm going off too now, so maybe I don't stay there as long. But I love the thought of just allowing it to unfold, knowing that every day I get up and I do something. I do one little thing at least, and most of us are doing a whole bunch of stuff to stay connected. And I'm finding, and Linda, I just keep the idea is totally A Course in Miracles mantra from the very beginning, and especially the way Jennifer teaches us. And it is a mantra at my Quaker meeting. And when I forgot about it with my story, and just 2 months ago, it was like this old, not old, but familiar that I could use in other spaces, but making this story special. And that is the problems or the lack of your thoughts of lack about being doesn't matter. What matters is continuing to connect with Holy Spirit. So, so I'm trying to look at the positive and forgive or love that doesn't, in how I don't step up. So a part that was really comforting to me, where it says, Holy Spirit perceives the conflict exactly as it is, and it is meaningless. And what I've been working on, I mean, it just was such a confirmation, is that in the little, what I call the blessing prayer from the Divine Experiment, and it says, may all conflict be resolved and only love revealed. Well, I went through this little, or what I'm reflecting is that I would say that thinking I'm handing the conflict over as a request. Dear God, please help me with these conflicts. And one day when I was praying that or reading it, the sentence, it was like, there was that, and I feel like I've shared this, but it's really I think it's helping me to shift, or I believe it's one of the tools that I'm working on, is I don't have to wait for conflict to be resolved. I don't have to work at it. I can just choose love and harmony. And in that moment, it's resolved. And so I am looking at my thoughts, and every time I'm in conflict, I am saying, stop. It's meaningless. You don't have to go there even for an instant. And I mean, we can go there and acknowledge it and feel it and all that. And so, you know, depending on what is. But this idea that I can, in a minute, go from just feeling mildly, you know, unsettled to fear. And it's when I want to stop it before the fear and just go, that conflict that's coming up right now and creating this is nothing. Don't go there. So this is what I'm working on, and I guess I'll be working on it for a while. But that was really such a lovely confirmation. And well, if I can figure out what I want to share later, I will before we end. Thank you.
I can't hear you, Linda, if you're talking.
Oh, can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Okay, yeah, I said I can see peace instead of this.
Yeah, Robin, thank you. That was very, very nice to hear you say that, and it's so true. And just the last paragraph was so good. I love the last paragraph. So that's paragraph 13. In this depressing state, the Holy Spirit reminds you gently that you are sad because you are not fulfilling your function as co-creator with God and are therefore depriving yourself of joy. This is not God's choice, but yours. If your mind could be out of accord with God's, you would be willing without meaning. I just thought that we're choosing it, not God. God wants us to be happy and joy-filled. And that's great, Robin, to stop the conflict before it turns into fear. It's very powerful.
Well, Leslie, you just read my next thought, and I couldn't.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's exactly what I wanted to share, so that was wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for following up.
Yes.
Else. Penelope.
First of all, Leslie, I just thought I'd say that, you know, my germs from the UK actually are part of us all being one. So you think they're separate because they're English, but they're not. Right, I'm going to go for this part of this text, and I don't know if it's like I'm going to talk gobbledygook here, but the bit that I'm just looking at, it's towards the bottom of paragraph 6. So if I start at it's at line can't read it properly, line 6, and it's fearful of perceiving the power of this source, it is forced to deprecate itself, in other words, the ego. This threatens its own existence, a state which it finds intolerable. Remaining logical but still insane, the ego resolves this completely insane dilemma in a completely insane way. It does not perceive its existence as threatened by projecting the threat onto you. So what at that point I'm getting is that it's then projecting onto the body. hence then the guilt, that then engenders the guilt. And then perceiving your being as non-existence, this ensures its continuance if you side with it by guarantee that you will not know your own safety. The ego cannot afford to know anything. And then the other bit, just a little bit further down when it says, produced by fear, the ego reproduces fear. And what it's kind of showing me is how it is, and it does talk about it in the course about this, it doesn't word it like this, about how tricky the ego is and how disruptive the ego is. And it's like, it just makes me laugh in some ways, because it's like it's projecting onto the body, then we're projecting onto someone we perceive as being out there. And so then it creates this like perpetuating disruption that we then get lost in, and we start believing it. But the bit that also I've never seen before is this produced by fear. The ego produces fear, which is actually a great thing for me to read, because I do experience a lot of fear. I could almost do with pinning that everywhere and recognizing that the minute that I'm going into fear, that's what's happening. So, yeah, that's my bit. Thank you for listening.
Yeah, thank you, Penelope. Yeah, fear can be perpetuated if we hang on to it, if we give it our power. I found that to be true for myself as well. Absolutely. Anybody
And I
else?
don't have it on my notes, and I don't have my book out, but somewhere in this reading it talks about the power of the mind. So I think somebody was almost getting to that line.
Yes. Yeah, our minds are super powerful. And I feel for me sometimes that can cause fear, just knowing how powerful it is. Because then it means that we are responsible for what we see. We are responsible for everything that we feel and experience. And that doesn't mean that I have to blame myself because I'm feeling or experiencing anything. It just means that it's time for me to come back to the place where I know that it's all love, that I set this up exactly this way on my journey so that I could have these experiences. For whatever reason, I set it up this way, and it's perfect no matter what it feels like or what the appearance is. It's perfect. And when I can realize that and be in that place of peace and love, then I can celebrate that, even if it's only for a moment. You know, let's throw a party. Let's just celebrate every single moment that we can feel that love and that joy and that peace. And the more I can focus on that, the more of it I will experience. And that's how I know that, yes, my mind is super powerful. And it can be something so simple as, I think I may have mentioned this a few weeks ago when I was in my Ascension Pathway class and Jennifer was getting ready to put us into a breakout group. And I just happened to think, oh, I really would kind of like to be in a group with Corinne and Elizabeth. And didn't I show up in a group with Corinne and Elizabeth? And it wasn't like, oh, I really want to, it was just whatever conversation we were having. I thought, I'd like to talk this over with them too. And there they were. And it was just like a passing thought. I didn't give it any energy whatsoever. And there it was. And I was like, whoa, my mind is super powerful. Yeah. Leslie.
I just want to mention something about fear since that was just brought up. I'm trying to think how to say this. I guess I'll just start with the story of when my mom and I were in Gladwin this last week. We usually go to a spot for the weekend. We decided to rent a cabin instead this week. Well, we didn't really think ahead and plan for other things to do around the area. So we just Googled, what's there to do in Gladwin. So we found 3 things that we wanted to do in Gladwin. And we looked at each other and we said, okay, but we're going to go with no attachments. Like Carla said, no attachments here. So the first thing was to go and feed the deer. And I love animals, and I thought that'd be really fun to go feed the deer, So we get to the deer place, closed. It's like, okay, well, it's closed. I guess we don't get to feed the deer today. So the second place, it was the Cottage Inn and Gardens. And so we have our GPS and we drive there, closed. It was closed too. It said closed for the season. Okay, so we go to the third place, and this was a conservation and trails. So we were going to walk a couple of the trails, and this is my part about the clear. When we drove through the parking lot, it was completely empty, and off to the side there was this blue van, and we could see where the trails were, but I mean there's nobody in sight except for this blue van off to the side. So when we pulled in, my mom thought that the van, I didn't even notice the van. I'm just in my la-la world, and she thought the van like was on its way out. So we walked to the conservation, the building, and we looked inside the windows. It was all dark. It was totally closed. And so we started to walk back to the car, and the van had just pulled up like 5 feet, and there was a single man in there. And I didn't feel any fear about it. But my mom, she said, honey, I know you want to walk on the trails, but I'm not comfortable walking in this isolated area. We don't know anything about the trails with this man in this van 50 feet away from us, And again, I didn't feel fear, but to me, that was just common sense. And, I said, oh, of course, Mom, if you're not comfortable, I'm not comfortable. I didn't want to put her in a bad situation, So we just went on our way, and we just passed the van, and he just was looking down, and he didn't make eye contact with us or anything. And then it's just amazing how the ego goes crazy. It's like, well, what if he was there trying to dump a body in those trails or something? And we interrupted him, and maybe we should have called the police. And we talked about it for about 30 minutes. And then the other hand were like, well, what if our guardian angels just really saved us from some horrible experience? And let alone my poor husband and my dad, you know what? We found Leslie's car in this isolated place, and we have no idea just the mind goes crazy. And yet I was just so grateful that, again, I wasn't attached to walking on those trails. The old me would have been like, Mom, don't be ridiculous. I said I was walking on the trail. We've already had 3 disappointments. We're walking on the trail. I just very graciously said, okay, no problem. And like I said, I barely even noticed the van until she said something. So I think, I guess common sense has its place in the world too. I don't know if I even made a point. But anyway, then we went to the cider mill and got donuts and cider and had a happy little time. But at least we didn't get kidnapped, and you didn't see us on Dateline. So
He was probably on his lunch break, and he was texting friends.
Exactly. It could have been.
But,
Robin, it could have been, and I did. I said, bless you with my holiness. I blessed him with my holiness.
I think that was a very wise choice, really, in our day and time. So I'm glad you went.
Because I didn't know if we should stop and say, hey, do you need help? And that's why when my mom drove by, it's like, if he would have looked up and waved at us or something, we might have done that. But he was no, like I said, my what I call my spidey sense, my intuition didn't feel alarmed, but hers did, and I respected that. So I'm sure he was probably fine, but why take the chance?
Right.
So you guys don't think I'm crazy, right? Okay.
Watch a lot of television. And like you said, who knows? Maybe it was your guardian angels working through your mom to protect you. We don't know what anything is for. So yeah.
Well, and I know that Robin, you've talked to me about it before, that story that, what's his name? I can't think of it. Talks about the story where if he would have turned right and he would have been in a horrible accident, but he turned left and he asked Arden and Purdon, why didn't I turn right? And they're like, well, you didn't need to learn that lesson. And I'm just like, well, maybe we were spared because we didn't need to learn that lesson. You know, thank you,
That
God.
was Gary Renard.
Thank you, Gary Renard. Yes. Yeah. So I don't know. It was just interesting that we weren't attached and we were safe and we still enjoyed our time together. And the cinnamon donut was delicious. So it was all good. And I didn't let it didn't ruin our time. You know, we didn't sit there and gossip and talk about, I mean, we did for a few minutes, you know, but that was okay. Penelope, you're laughing. Stuff like that must not happen in England, huh? And see, I don't watch the news and I don't watch Dateline and I don't watch any of that stuff, but my mom does. And she's like, oh no, honey, we are not going for a walk in those trails. I'm like, really? Why not? That blue van is still over there. It is? Oh, okay.
Leslie, I'm laughing because it's not that it doesn't happen over here, because things like this do happen over here. And I'm laughing because A, it's the way you tell it. And also what was also going through my mind was, I think you just wanted to create an exciting afternoon for yourself.
Maybe that was it. You know, you can only have so much peace on this earth.
Exactly, yeah.
So not true. That's funny.
Yeah, and it's that imagination that allows us to be creative. So, you know, you could take that story and you could write a whole novel about that, you know?
And you know, the other thing is people that are truly fear-based, they could have thought of going back to this cabin. And it was a pretty isolated cabin too, and been so afraid, like, oh my gosh, you know, we better just pack up and go home because, you know, and I just refuse to live in that kind of fear. I just refuse.
Yeah, me too.
So, yeah.
But next time, Leslie, can you just remember to take the guy's registration down?
Well, you know, my mom and I talked about that because I was like, well, what if he was there to dump a body or something, heaven forbid, in the backwoods and down this trail and nobody knew? She's like, well, I guess we could have, in hindsight, called the police and just said, you know what? There's just a man in a van. I'm not saying he's doing anything wrong, but it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon and there's a totally isolated spot and you might want to check it out. But we weren't led to do that at the time. So, and I know we did not get his registration. So I'm glad I haven't, well, I wouldn't have, but nobody said, hey, did you hear what happened in Gladwin, Michigan over the weekend? You know? So anyway.
It's perfect. It's like all the different directions that our minds can take us in that story. In that one story, just there was a man parked in a van in a
Exactly. And like Robin said, he was probably texting his friend.
Yeah.
Because he's bored on he could work a million things. That's a whole 2 bits. Send him a whole pona, bless him with my holiness, and move on.
Exactly.
That reminds me of Gene Houston says, stop boring God. So I think we're not boring God with our stories.
Absolutely.
Anyway, I wanted to ask a question, Linda, that is a little bit unrelated to what we're talking about right at the moment. But last week, I think you had mentioned that you were studying a course of love.
Yes.
Or love, or whatever that's called. And I was just curious, I don't know if you have time today or if you're interested in, would you care to describe to us the difference between the two, or how are you finding that that course of love?
Well, I'm finding them very similar.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like A Course in Miracles maybe a little bit more intellectual, and the Course of Love is a little more in the heart, which makes sense because it's called A Course of Love.
Yeah.
And I'm enjoying reading them at the same time, to be honest, because for me, it's a confirmation of what I have learned from A Course in Miracles and what I have believed even before I was able to understand what I was reading in A Course in Miracles. And it's still, some of it can still be challenging to to understand, just like when I'm reading A Course in Miracles. So they're, for me, they're very similar, but it feels a little bit more in the heart than in the intellect.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. And so do you feel that it has the same basic message?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes. Of love and forgiveness. Absolutely.
Mhm. Beautiful. Thank you.
You're welcome. Robin.
I know it must be time, but just quickly, just thinking about seeing the appearances in the lessons. It talks about seeing differently and seeing, and so for me, I've got, for the ego, it's like I'm seeing through the eyes. And for my spiritual self, I'm seeing through the vision. I'm seeing through God's vision. So I've made two little labels to help me. So, oh, you know, and I can look at the very same thing that I've been looking at with my eyes and not liking, and change my mind and say, see through the vision of God's love. And it softens and it gets quiet, you know, and it somehow it brings peace.
Yes.
Where before I was upset. So I don't know if that's helpful. And then just to follow through, I had started listening to class 3 when and you read from a flame book, a prayer. Oh my gosh, Linda, that was like everybody's prayer. And I'm just wondering, I'd like to request, would you mind bringing that prayer to one of our classes and praying with that about our heartbreaks and surrendering it all? Oh, it was just so moving.
Yeah, thank you, Robin. Yeah, I'll be happy to do that. I don't think I have it here because I usually
sometime that would be sweet.
Yeah, that was in we were talking about the 7 Sacred Flames by Aurelia Louise Jones, and I have an addendum or a pamphlet that comes from that book. It's just prayers from the 7 Sacred Flames. So, yeah, it's one of my favorites in there.
And if you do that, you can maybe you can help us so we can get one for ourselves that we like.
Okay.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Does anybody have anything that they would like to share before we close out? Phil.
This is very quick, and I was not planning to share this, but I want to say thank you to everyone who shared. And Leslie, your story totally made me to want to say this, because, you know, I'm following the Course in Miracles for Dummies. And this couple sentences that really stood out for me. One was, the ego is perfectly logical, but clearly insane. And then it goes to say, the ego's goal is to attack your mind's ability to be the decision maker. And I thought, you know, this was really true for me, that ego is perfectly logical, and how often I run with that logic, but don't even look at the insanity of it. And, you know, I catch myself so often really doing this, really looking at the logic and logically following everything as the world says that you have to be logical. And how often I tell my 14-year-old, you know, that she has to be logical. She has to take the logic from math to every aspect of her life. And, you know, that this totally struck me when it says, but the ego is clearly insane. And the insanity of my own thought following the perfection of the ego's logic. And that is also, for me, is the place to be, in the place of separation, and creating so much separation in every way. And that was really powerful lesson for me. And so, then it went on to read. It says, love is your power, which ego must deny. And how can I just stay in that power of love instead of following the logic of the ego? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. And I just, while you were saying that too, it thought crossed my mind, Leslie, who knows if that prayer, that blessing that you said for that man in the van may have prevented him from doing something that was unsavory. You never know.
That's interesting, Linda, because I was just feeling a little almost guilty just after what you said, Phil, like, oh my gosh, maybe I wasn't open-hearted enough. Maybe I wasn't in love. Maybe I was judging him. Was my ego it just gets tricky because I don't, because I mean, I just always think everybody's everybody is good at heart, and there is that spark of divinity, and I believe that. And yet in that situation, I didn't, well, I guess I acted it in a way. I did bless him with my holiness, but it's not like I tapped on his door and said, sir, do you need help? I don't know. I guess I did the right thing because that's what I did,
But Leslie, I took it like, I was not going to share that. It really told me, oh, you have to bring this up, because I was holding it back, and I thought I was grateful that you shared that story.
Okay. So you think I wasn't an ego?
Not to me. It was only for me. I was thinking that, you didn't go into the place of blaming him and saying,
oh, right,
it's dangerous, so he shouldn't be there, and what is
oh,
he
right,
doing?
that's true. Yeah. That makes me feel better. Okay, good job, Les. Excellent, thank you.
Because that would be
I
the
didn't judge him
insanity.
that way.
Yeah.
Okay,
and
thank you.
I took it like you were in a way, the way you brought up the story, that it really made me to say, this is what God wants you to say, and you're holding back. There I'm providing you a platform to bring it up.
Awesome. Thank you, Phil.
Thank you.
And I'm so sorry, you guys, but I gotta go. I always miss the closing prayer, but I love you all, and I'll see you guys next week.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.
Anything else? Anybody?
And for me, I can't believe the time is over with. It just seemed like we just started. So I didn't get, I'm still trying to figure out where you're at in here, but I think I'll get clearer.
Yep. Well, that brings me to next week. I would like to stay in chapter 7 and read section 6, which is the totality of the kingdom.
Okay.
And I know that Phil is following the annotated, what do they call it? The annotated edition. It's the purple book. We read from the blue book, which is this one. But they're similar. They're not exact, but they're similar. So whichever book you're reading it from, that's fine.
Okay.
No, that is the reason I'm following the dummies.
Yes.
That is a good book, though. I mean, it has a lot of information in there, or different ways of seeing it.
Yep. I'm reading both. I'm reading the annotated version with my prayer partner Lori. So I do find both of them helpful. Yeah.
Are you able to stay chapter by chapter with that, the way that is?
Well, we are going chapter by chapter, but we're not comparing them between each other, the purple book and the blue book.
Okay.
Yeah. But I think Phil can probably attest that she's been able to follow along enough that it's still
okay.
But they're different in section.
Yeah. So some of the sections, some of the titles may be different, but
exactly,
we're in the same general area. We're talking about the same basic things. So
Penny wanted to say something.
Go ahead, Penelope.
Just a really quick question, and I don't know if I've imagined this afternoon, but when I was outside reading this section, I thought I'd read a part of it where it's referring to us placing like a fence around the body. So like the fence, the framework becomes the body, and I don't know if I've imagined this now because I cannot find it. But it was just in response to what Deborah was said a while back now. Because if I have read this and I haven't totally imagined it, what it helped for me in that moment when I was reading it was actually to see the body like a fence was actually helping me to kind of get past the body, if that makes sense. But I can't find it to quote it or anything, so I don't know if I've imagined it.
Yeah, it doesn't sound familiar, but I can't recall everything I read word for word, but it's a cool way to think about it. You know, the body is, for me, it's a vehicle that I'm using while I'm here, appearing to be here in spirit at the moment. So yeah, that's great analogy.
Okay, if I find it again, I'll mark it to mention it. And then you know I'm not going completely crazy.
Yeah, they're all a little crazy, but yeah, not for that.
Yeah, and Linda, just quickly, I mean, I feel like I've read this in A Course in Miracles. It says that the body is here for communication.
It is.
And so to communicate our spirit part.
Yes. Yeah, it's that divine alarm clock that Jennifer talks about. It's the way that we are alerted to when our mind is thinking in error. You know, we can feel it, like we have a pain in the gut or we get a headache or, you know, sore muscles or whatever. It's like, okay, what is this about? It's a way to help alert us what's going on.
So we chose to come in physical form, but then we started thinking, oh, this is really not all there is. And so now we're learning and we want to use our body to communicate and extend the truth of who we are.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Robin.
It's part of God's creation.
Exactly. So next week, Chapter 7, Section 7, the totality of the kingdom. I'm going to read from Pathways of Light, Insights for workbook lesson number 260, which is Let Me Remember God Created Me.
What was the number again?
260, workbook lesson 260.
Uh-huh.
And I'm reading the Pathways of Light Insights.
Is it just the totality of the kingdom, or was that we're reading for
One
next?
section.
Thank you so much.
It's long enough, and I feel like our conversations have been deep enough just going one section at a time. So maybe if we find really tiny sections, we can do more than one, but I'm enjoying just doing one.
I really appreciate it, Linda. Thank you.
Good, thank you.
Yeah.
So let me remember God created me. The sentence that stands out to me this time as I read this lesson is, yet as your thought, I have not left my source, remaining part of who created me. Jesus reminds me that I am God's thought. And if I am God's thought, so is my brother God's thought. We all came from the same source, the mind of God, and we remain there. We remain as thought in the mind of God. It is helpful for me to remember that this and only this is the truth. It is helpful for me to remember that my dreams of something else being real are just illusions. It is helpful for me to remember that my brother's dreams are just illusions. It is helpful for me to return to remembering that the only truth of everyone in this world is that they are unified thought in the one mind of love. This remembering comforts me and brings me peace. This remembering cuts through all the ego's clutter and deception. All the conflict of the world is easy to cut through. It never happened. All the myriad stories of differences and separation are false. They are lies. They are substitutes for the truth of our one identity. We are all the same love in the mind of love. That alone is true. Today I will rest in this remembering. Today I will be comforted in this remembering. Today I will practice remembering that I did not create myself. Let me remember God created me, how God would have me be. I am. It's helpful to look at the implications of the recognition that God created me. First, the Course tells us that God is love and nothing else. It then tells us the implication is God is but love, and therefore so am I. The Course also tells us that love is eternal, changeless, and forever extending itself. Since I am love, I must be changeless, eternal, and forever extending love. Therefore, I am harmless and invulnerable, perfectly safe. Being harmless, guilt is impossible, and fear inconceivable. Joy and peace are my natural state, for they are simply attributes of love. All this I recognize when I remember God created me. I remember myself and share God's holiness when I remember God created me. I recognize myself in all my brothers when I remember God created me. I am wholly free of conflict and filled with the joy of sharing love with all that is when I remember God created me. Today, let me remember the truth that I am created by God. I could never create myself in truth. Amen. Thank you all for coming. I'll see you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Thank you,
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Linda.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Nice
Bye.
to see you, Penelope.
And you too, Robin.
And Diana, it's nice to meet you.